Assassin's Creed Origins is a beautiful game. From the new combat system to the RPG mechanics to the stunning world of ancient Egypt, there's no doubt that Origins is one of the best Assassin's Creed games ever made. The story of Origins is a pretty big shakeup. Instead of a son avenging his father, a son avenging his mother, or a son avenging his father and his adopted father, you get to be a father avenging his son. Origins gives us a classic revenge story where Bayek, the strong, stoic, and friendly Magi, protector of Egypt, dismantles a group called the Templars, the Order of Ancients, after they brutally murder his son. Bayek from the beginning is kind of a perfect dude. He's a badass, he fights for the people, he defends honor and destroys tyranny, which is a very limiting place to be from a character standpoint at the beginning of the story. If you're flawless, what can you learn? How can you grow? The obvious direction is for Bayek to learn that revenge is not what's important, and that's kind of what they tease at the beginning. Bayek is bloodthirsty, he brutally mashes someone to death in the first sequence. He and Aya make passionate love after every vengeful conquest, like they're just really getting off on revenge killing. But this is a problem, because we're supposed to be watching the story of someone who will ultimately found an eternal organization dedicated to revenge murder. So it's not like Bayek is realistically going to have a moment at the end where he puts down his sword and decides it's not worth it. We know from the beginning that he's actually going to convince a bunch of other people to also commit revenge murder forever. Quite disappointingly, Origins still tries to tell a revenge remorse story, but they don't commit to it at all, so it kind of doesn't matter. All we get is one scene of him at a table telling everyone revenge is overrated, and we also get him in his climactic battle saying he can't do it for some reason, which is all really stupid. In fact, it takes away from whatever might have been powerful about the idea that avenging his son would free the child's soul from the duat and send him to the field of reeds. But that remorse is such a minor part of the story that you would be forgiven for missing it entirely. Which means the only real conclusion to an arc we get is that in the end, Bayek and Aya decide they want different things, so they split up. But since it never felt like their relationship was the core of the story, and they have different goals almost from the beginning anyway, it's not exactly heartbreaking. But if another crucial failing of the story had been corrected, there would have been an incredible opportunity for creating an even more satisfying arc for Bayek. It's right there in the title of the game. This is Assassin's Creed Origins, the starting point of the stab-happy hitmen we have known and loved for 10 years now. As soon as this became obvious when the game was announced, I had one huge fear: that the story would be about a dude who was to kill people for some reasons, and at the very end it would tease the start of the Assassins. That is exactly what we got, and the alternative would have been so much cooler. If I were in charge of writing a game story about the origins of the Brotherhood, here are the things I would consider priorities. Number 1, building compelling stories throughout the game about the origins of some of the most iconic imagery and rituals of the Brotherhood. The game actually tries to do this, like twice. Once where you see Bayek accidentally lose his finger to the hidden blade, thus revealing the origins of that particular ritual, and then in the end when he drops the eagle's skull onto the sand and it leaves the imprint of the assassin's emblem. Why wasn't there more of this? Give us stories that explain things like the tenets of the creed, the leadership structure, the hoodie fetish. Go ahead and be super on the nose with it, because that's totally in line with the series tone as it exists, and just make the reasons behind these things cool. Yeah, it's kind of dope that his finger got chopped off by accident, and that's why for generations it was required that recruits also chop their fingers off. And using the eagle skull as the basis for the assassin logo is pretty cool, even though the internet sleuthed that one out years ago. I get that a lot of people would think it's corny or cheesy, but who cares? It's an origin story. That's what you do. Even this game has its fair share of cheesy, corny stuff anyway, and Assassin's Creed has always had plenty of it. The point is, if you do it well, nobody cares. But more importantly, number 2, give us the creation of the Brotherhood halfway through the game, not at the end, and make it a crucial part of the story. When the crocodile assassination was over halfway through the game, it seemed like the perfect time to give us a true official beginning for the Brotherhood. Instead, Aya's like, oh yeah, there are more people to kill. And then there's some political guff you gotta do for Cleopatra, and you're still looking for the dude who murdered your kid, and just, ugh. The fact that Bayek and Aya are going to found the Brotherhood is a foregone conclusion, so just do it. Make it a part of the story, because there's nothing interesting about an origin story for the Brotherhood that just shuffles those origins into a post-game cutscene. All those moments in the ending where you finally see that logo, you get to see those hooded recruits running through the city, we know that's going to happen from the second we start the game. There's no mind-blowing revelation there. It's not a plot twist. Delaying it is pointless. Also on the list of things that shouldn't be treated as plot twists and saved for the end, the villain of your game. Remember the bad guy from Assassin's Creed Unity? Me neither, because he didn't exist as a villain until the very end of the game. Compare that to, say, Rodrigo Borgia, or Torres, or even Charles Lee, villains who make their presence known at the beginning and have several encounters with the protagonists throughout the game. It blew my mind that the game thought I was having this epic climactic boss fight in the ending with Flavius, a character I just had to Google the name of despite fighting him a week ago. But back to the origin story nonsense. How many times do Aya and Bayek share knowing glances as they talk about their eternal creed, while never once explaining to each other or the audience what the hell it is? It's vague, it's mashed masturbatory, and it does not work. All this pretentious babble about how their creed will never die, and they're like poets of blood or whatever, it all just comes out of nowhere once the story's already over. And lastly, number 3, give us a cast of characters as founding Brotherhood members who we care about. All through the game, I was trying to identify the friends and associates of Bayek who we'd inevitably see joining up with his Brotherhood. People like Apollodorus and Hodafriz. Then, who do we see enlisting at the end? A bunch of total nobodies. AC stories can live or die on their supporting cast. The Ezio trilogy had characters like Niccolo Machiavelli and Caterina Sforza and Leonardo da Vinci, assisting with the assassin cause. Revelations was a pretty minor game, but the fans all remember Yusuf, because he was great. AC4 was all about that band of merry pirate friends like Hornigold and Thatch. Bayek and Aya needed a squad, a group of people who weave in and out of the story and who come together for their own individual reasons to fight for the freedom of mankind. Imagine the alternate universe where Bayek and Aya get a supporting cast of compelling characters, and halfway through the game they all form a loose alliance of hidden ones, as they're ultimately called, and in that process of formation and that systematic overthrow of Egypt's oppressors, we see them experience the stories that lead to the Brotherhood's most iconic practices. Maybe in this alternate universe, Bayek gets an arc. He starts out just as strong, committed, and benevolent as he already did, only maybe he resists the help of others initially. And only when he fails does he learn to accept his wife and his friends to assist him in his cause, even if their involvement puts their lives at risk. When you know that your story is going to be about people who form a brotherhood of assassins, it's a pretty good idea to give the story a theme that will tie into such a choice. Let that formation be a moment of redemption and growth for the character, and not something he does with little justification at the end. To put it simply, make that turning point a crucial part of the story, have it mean something. Let's talk briefly about the modern day. When it became known that Origins would bring back third-person playable modern day, which we haven't seen since like AC3 in 2012, obviously most of us were ecstatic. It's too bad that this is yet another modern day story where nothing happens. Syndicate's cutscene-based story led the narrative far further, and that combined to about 9 minutes of content. The AC franchise has had a huge villainous threat looming over it since AC3, Juno, and every game since has decided not to deal with that threat, pushing it further and further off to the point where really nobody cares anymore. Syndicate gave us a chance to catch up with Juno by inserting her into the World War I rift, which was an encouraging sign that maybe, finally, we'd see the Juno plot come to an end in the next game. And honestly, if you're going to go full third-person modern day, you might as well finish that story. Instead, we're introduced to yet another brand new character who will supposedly become the new modern day lead, who does a whole lot of absolutely nothing in the story, and then a familiar assassin shows up, played by the wrong voice actor for Christ's sake, and then it's over. The new girl is Layla Hassan, an Egyptian, probably lesbian engineer, and just who cares? She's a nobody. She accomplishes nothing and no one cares. How many years can they put off this looming threat? How many times in a row can they introduce a completely fresh start for the modern day story without ever following up on the threads introduced in the previous game? Either finish it or wrap it up off screen somehow so we can all move on. Ultimately, this is a beautiful, exceptionally well-made game that is just let down by an uninspired, uncreative story. What we got is an Assassin's Creed game that effectively has no assassins and no creed. It's merely a perfect warrior's cliched revenge quest culminating in an unsatisfying and unearned conclusion. It's a shame that what could be one of the top 3 Assassin's Creed games ever has one of the bottom 3 Assassin's Creed stories. We can only hope that the next iteration pays more attention to its story and gives us something worthy of the franchise's title.